de Energía y Geostrategia.
Good morning. Welcome to our Energy and Geostrategy meeting. It's a pleasure to have you here at our offices, and I would like to greet Juan Francisco Martínez Núñez and thank him for coming. And the study related to Energy Day is a key factor of world strategy. And we're fully aware that now more than ever, everything relates to energy. This is one of the most important axes within the international panorama. So we are now like to start this very important meeting. The first session will have Antonio Brufau, who's the president of Repsol, the Iñigo Díaz, Espada, the president of CECME. Then we have the president of the Spanish Club for Energy, Mr. Jordi García Tabernero. And then we have Juan Francisco Martínez, the admiral, who comes from the Ministry of Defensa. I would like to remind you that if you would like to make a mention in social media, the hashtag is Energeo23, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. And so I would like to ask the panel members for the first session to come up to the stage, please.
Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. The Admiral, the General Secretary of the Defense, the Director of the National Defense Studies, the General Director of the Spanish Strategic Studies, the President of the Spanish Energy Club, the President of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council, and ladies and gentlemen, for me it's a great satisfaction to welcome you here today to our headquarters yet another day to present the publication Energy and Geostrategy 2023. It is a very special occasion for us, and we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of this publication. So I would like to thank absolutely everyone for their support over the last 10 years, from ENERCLUB, the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Club, the Spanish Institute of Strategy Study, all authors and collaborators, and also our readers. Throughout this time, we have done very hard work to provide content that is of good quality, of a report that gives you information and inspires after everything related to energy and geostrategy. Along the way, we have created a community that is very passionate and very committed. A year has gone by since our last meeting. It's been a very important time in our geostrategic world because there's been important events have taken place worldwide. Finally, we have left behind the COVID-19 pandemic, and the response of the governments has allowed quite, should we say, quick end to the pandemic, which affected the relationship between countries. Now we have new dynamics when we're fighting for world leadership. Secondly, a year has gone by since the Ukraine invasion by Russia, which has generated lots of different situations of violence and has directly affected thousands of people. Apart from the loss of lives, it's had a negative financial impact, which can now be seen as an increase in the price of energy, and it has shown how we have considerable problems related to European energy sources. So now Europe needs to review in a very thorough manner this strategy, guaranteeing not just sustainability, but also the security of supply and the financial accessibility to everyone. Thirdly, the tension between the United States and China has increased considerably over recent times. In August, the United States approved the law to reduce inflation, the so-called ILA, and there's over 370 billion euros for clean energy, climate change, and energy security. And so it has a strategic advantage that China has compared to the rest of the world, and it has invested considerably. This law says that there is a clear framework for investors for the next 10 years, and there is a lot of neutrality and technology implications. Now we are facing an important challenge with regard to the position on the global panorama. So if we look at the pace of how things are going between China and the United States, and then we're looking to see who's going to have the leadership that is necessary for these things. So there is a transformation required within our globalization model. And at the moment, we are redefining this. And it has been affected by an important lack of stability and a social discontent in lots of different areas of the world. This situation is very different depending on the geographical position of countries that are very far away from us. And also on our closest neighbours have been affected, for example, France, who have experienced over the last few months a lot of social tension, which has been very obvious. We can see down the breakdown between the relationship between the Maghreb countries and the very fast propagation of terrorism in the Sahara area. And so this represents an imminent threat for Europe. So there's lots of different events that have taken place in Europe which cause an impact on energy. So therefore it says there is a very close relationship between geostrategy and energy. This publication offers us the opportunity to go into greater depth in the details, and there's different relationships between both these concepts. Therefore, I would like to express my sincere thanks to the authors and the coordinator, which is the eminent Mr. Claudio Anfe, for his dedication and commitment, which is truly exemplary. And I don't want to go any further, but as I said before, I would like to give you a very warm welcome today, and I hope you enjoy a very interesting and productive session. So without further ado, I would like to give the word to Iñigo Díaz, who is the Spanish chairman of the CECME.
Buenos días a todos.
Welcome everyone. I'm General Secretary of the Defense Policy, the Lieutenant General from the Spanish Institute of Defense, and also the Spanish Energy Club and friends. I would like to thank you very much for coming along to this presentation for Energy and Geostrategy 2023. And as we've said, this year it's our 10th edition, and I would like to start offering my thanks very especially to our strategic partner over all these years, the Spanish Institute of Strategic Studies, and also their General Francisco José Tapua, and also his predecessor in the President, which was Mr. Miguel Ángel Maestas, and all the people at the Institute who help us in this work. On a day like today, I would like to remind all the people who have generated this document, and especially the first editions, the President of CECME, Mr. Arturo Gonzalo, and Marta Camacho, who is the General Secretary. And of course, I'd like to thank our dear Claudio Aranzabi, who has been the coordinator at the very beginning. He's been the true heart and soul of this publication, and this is why it is so important today. This work and all the members of the committee, the ENERCLUB and our sponsors, especially Repsol, who have welcomed us here today at their headquarters, and all the authors who have written in our publication since the first edition. And there was too many, I'm afraid, to be able to mention today. Today is a special edition for all of us who are part of this project, not just because it's 10th anniversary, but also it has been developed in parallel to the most important events in the geopolitics over the recent times, which is the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, which has caused a global energy crisis, and especially in Europe, for the reasons that we all know. A crisis with a very uncertain horizon, and we still don't know how it's going to end up. So we do think there's going to be important infrastructure changes in international relationships with very deep effects on our sector. So competitiveness, sustainability, etc. And for many years they have been leading the World Energy Council. So now they are the center of all debates. And so it's very obvious how urgent it is to unify all these strange issues. And so, as we say, we have the energy crisis and the war. So this year, it means that we've included 5 chapters. The first chapter is related to the effects of energy shocks in the national economies. And it offers information about the great impact of the cost of a very essential resource like energy and how it affects all the different economies. There's another chapter which is a call to attention. We're not just exposed to the risk of depending on big countries who export energy like Russia, but also for countries like China, who have a majority of the manufacturing industry, and that is where a lot of the critical minerals come from. So when we're talking about future strategies, we should be very careful of not replacing certain dependencies with other dependencies. And other chapters relate on specific geographical areas that should be looked at carefully when we're talking about the current energy situations and to see the role that they could have in the future relating to areas where they offer energy. And I'm talking about the Caucasus area and Latin America. I think it's essential to ensure that our dialogue, the geostrategic dialogue with these regions, is taken very seriously, and that we have to work on shared priorities, which could be the energy transition or the security of supply. The publication includes 2 chapters which analyze in specific energy technologies. One, the renewable technologies, and the other one, nuclear energy. One of the factors which will condition our ability to balance the 3 elements of this energy dilemma, which is the technological development and innovation, the strategies and the different paces that each country goes along will give us geopolitical and competitive issues, and we should be careful to look at those. And there is an interview at the end, the interview of Teresa Rivera, who is the Minister of Energy here in Spain. So once again, thank you all very much for this project, and I hope that we will be having this publication in very many years to come. So I would now like to give the floor to Jordi García Tabernero, who's the Vice President of the Spanish Energy Club.
Buenos días a todo el mundo.
Good morning, everyone. The Admiral, the General Secretary of the Defense Policy, the Lieutenant General, who is from the School of the Armed Forces, and also the President of Repsol, the President of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council, authorities and friends. For me, it's a true honor as the President of the Spanish Energy Club to be here in the presentation of this doc, which is called Energy and Geostrategy 2023, and to do this on such a very important date, which is today on its 10th anniversary. I would like to start by thanking everyone like Glario Mardo and the entire team who have made this possible, and I would also like to congratulate each and every one of the people who each year make this project possible. Since the Spanish Institute of Strategic Studies has been involved, and the Spanish Energy Club, since they met in the year 2013 for the very first time to start this magnificent study. It's a project that started with the objective of promoting the collaboration between public and private entities, and also to have some sort of continuity, which of course has been achieved, and also it's something that's able year after year to be able to detect the most important issues on the international arena. And it's very important for ENERCLUB because it includes a different view, a very broad view of the energy world, and it allows our association to be open to the whole world and to get to know a more global reality. The energy world cannot be understood without the world of geostrategies, and it's always been like that. They're very closely related, but with the different crises that have taken place and ones that we experience today with the invasion of Ukraine, well, it is now more obvious. I think it's very important to ensure that this project has many more additions after today. It's a very interesting project, and I would like to give you 3 very important ideas. One is the ability that the European Union to have and the member states to work on the necessary adjustment of the energy systems with the objective of reducing the dependence on Russia. Also, this has been done in a very streamlined manner, very quickly, and with a capacity for consensus that was very high. In this respect, Spain has played a very important role and has demonstrated how it has a very important role to play in the different solutions. In the Spanish representative, this 6 months will be the president of the European Union, and it will show everything that our country can contribute to Europe. And so from our Energy Club, we're going to give as much support as possible to this. The second idea is that of unity and challenges. Now more than ever, we're very convinced that we have to accelerate this transition, not just for climate or environmental reasons, but also for issues related to security of supply, which until now had never been talked about in such an emphatic manner as we have done over the last few months. And of course, issues related to competitiveness. This was mentioned before by Iñigo. This is something that we know as we call the energy trilemma, which is security of supply, sustainability related to the environmental issues, as well as the cost of energy, which can be paid by citizens and company. So we say it's essential for society to understand and becomes involved in this issue. More than ever now, we need citizens to understand the reason why the decisions are made in this sector that's so complex and so difficult, which is the energy sector, and that there are not just one simple solution to this. So communication is very important. We all need to use a common language, we need to be very transparent, and we all need to believe in each other. So the Spanish Energy Club, with energies like Energeo, so where we can connect the national and international use, and we carried out joint analysis which contribute and help us to find solutions for these challenges. And this helps us to fulfill this role of transparency and trust. And to do this, we firmly support and we expect, as I said before at the very beginning of my speech, that we can continue to collaborate for many more years to come. I would like to congratulate everyone, and now I would like to give the floor to the Admiral, the General Secretary of the Defense Policy, Juan Francisco Martínez Núñez. And first of all, I'd like to thank him for having made time in his very busy general agenda to be with us here today.
Presidente de
The chairman of Repsol, the chairman of the Spanish Committee of the World Energy Council, the vice president of the Spanish Energy Club, good friends and colleagues, and everyone who is part of this panel, Mr. Aranzadi, the General Manager of the CECME, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. Well, apparently, we are in a very comfortable place, and we all feel wonderful sitting here in the audience. But sociologically and psychologically speaking, we are sitting in a very difficult place. So we feel that the sword is here affecting us, and we feel that between the sword and a wall, and what do we need? We need more energy to be able to progress for our welfare, our security, and for our daily lives. It's a situation which at the moment, as has already been said, this is affecting us psychologically and physiologically, and we think that there would be, have solutions on the medium term, because between a rock and a hard place. And so we're undergoing this transition to be able to change from the consumption of fossil fuels and change it to be used with a package. It's a new package, and as friends of the environment, it consists of non-contaminating resources. And it seems that nuclear fusion and hydrogen will have a very important role to play. And like all transitions, we are undergoing times of uncertainty. So the end of fossil fuels will require a lot of enormous research. And this will cause political tensions, geopolitical tensions, which are in addition to the ones that we already have. And we're seeing this on a daily basis. So taking into account all these different tensions, I think will be shown in our first sessions by General Dacova and Victor Bath. They will be talking about this in the next session. So the countries who base their economies, which are highly dependent on fossil fuels, they don't know if they're going to manage to change their models, their financial models, in time. And in addition to that, there is potential situation whereby, well, it can be considered a paradox, the fact that, well, I don't know anything about the futures market, but I think it would be something that the fact that we now are aware of a future reduction of the fossil fuels requirements will mean that you will be investing less in the extraction, and this can also create a lot of bottlenecks, and there will be a lot of things will be missing, or there won't be sufficient as we go along the way. But there are lots of other factors involved too. So the role of the Defense will have a lot more to do with the transformation of the armed forces to adapt to climate change and also to the management of the conflicts that may arise. To reform the energy model for the armed forces is a very important challenge. For over 1.5 centuries, it hadn't been carried out. At the end of the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century was the last time when we changed the way our boats were propelled, all the vessels were built, and then, of course, the way that we fight on the land. So fossil fuels and how we use all this energy is not easy at all. So all these supplies are being threatened, and the consumption for every fighting unit is very high. All this has to be done taking into account the threat of someone who's an opponent. Each day we see this, and we've seen how that Russia has attacked the energy infrastructures in the Ukraine. So with regard to that, together with several big Spanish companies, I would like to thank especially the company that has invited us here today, Repsol, for their generosity when we've asked for help to, well, as I say, to align the energy problems in some cities and hospitals and in old age people's homes in the Ukraine. Earlier we were talking about how difficult it is to supply fuel in our operations, but also when we're on peace missions. And even though the military consumption of fuels is a very small part compared to the industrial consumption of energy or what the citizens use, but in specific circumstances it can be very important. Our first solutions to transform the armed forces is to reduce the consumption of equipment and systems, and the consumptions of the main, should we say, vessels, planes, tanks, is all related to how much they consumed a few decades ago, and they're still improved. But it's not the individual consumption of all our equipment, but what we need now is a complete revolution in these changes. Evolution that changes the way we have to operate and to learn all about this, because also at the moment we're normally in times where we prepare, we study, and we're in times of peace, and that is also times when we have a lot of consumptions. We have a lot of expectations in the digital simulation systems, which is one of the most standout is what we call the digital twin, which allows us to have a better training, more in-depth symbiosis on the battlefield. But you have to be very aware that this simulation is really not sufficient. It is not sufficient to replicate the conditions of how difficult one of our operating situations are, because it cannot reproduce all the situations we have to face. So we still need to work on this. So Spain, at the end of October, we are going to house the first training course for the fast deployment corps. And we saw this in the Sudan and a very sad evacuation process in Afghanistan. We've seen how important it is, and we're trying to focus this on a very key element, which is to reduce the energy that is associated to the use of this force. And something else I'd like to mention, we know through history there has also been a lot of comparisons between the different tensions that exist in the world, but we've been very precise because when there's confrontation between the different platforms and the different networks, in a simplified way, we look at the platforms. These systems are normally very big, they're complex systems, they're very expensive systems. You know, if you look at one of our fleets or a submarine, or if we look at one of our tanks or a 5th generation aircraft. So we can include changes relatively easily, and we can update the new scenarios, which are these platforms. And so these so we say these are situations where we have to be very flexible with regard to how we're going to be using all these different systems. There are moments in time where we have what we call these hives, and the other times when we have platforms. At the end of the 19th century, as I say, 130 years in the past, there was when the torpedoes were invented, and we had these torpedo launches, and they represented a great threat for our tanks. But the tanks still exist, and many years later, we have what we have, should we say, these battleships or these armored vehicles. Today, the conflicts like Ukraine are focusing yet again on all these different networks, which is artificial intelligence, robotics, which give us this omnipresent universal principles of these non-tripulated drones, the unmanned drones. But probably it would be very risky to support everything on this particular network. Previously, we were having a coffee, and I was talking to several people from the area of Bilbao, and normally they're very good card players, and they know that, you can't always win. So to make a balance between a platform and a network, well, what does this mean? It means that, well, with regard to what we're talking about today, I don't want to go off the issue. What are we talking about? Energy saving. The platforms consume a lot more than these different systems. Well, all this should take us to reductions in the reduction of fossil fuels, and also it can lead us, and I think Victor's already mentioned this as well as Iñigo in his few words. This can lead us to a new camp of prisoners where they are camping along with lots of other entities, which means that there's another added risk factor, another bottleneck, and geopolitical tensions. And so the energy transition of the armed forces is up and running, and it gives us this special benefits. I don't know if this is the right time to ask for help. 17th of March last year. Let me read you the headlines. The directive of the Ministry of Defense for actions with regard to climate change. They assigned a person who is called CECME, and he was asked to coordinate this. And so please, the first thing I would like to ask you and to Mr. General Jacoba, Mr. Anastasiou, and Victor, in the next study, could you please take this into account with all these different ideas? We have our ideas, but we do think that it would be good for everyone else to have ideas, because the armed forces are very open to receive any suggestions and ideas from the people here today. We need you, because the armed forces obviously are totally part of this energy transformation, but we need to do this offering full guarantee of the security of our citizens, and we will contribute to this with innovative ideas and measures, and very careful ones, because we never want them to represent any bad negative effects on national defense.